Yes, we're on the air. Welcome to Between the Lines. It's June, folks. And we're with Congressman Chuck Fleischmann here to update us in Anderson and Roane County and let us know exactly what's going on in D.C. or what he perceives to be going on. Congressman, things are, I don't want to say blowing up, that's a bad way, but things are exploding. There are a lot of issues around the world, from Ukraine to, and here at home too, but we'll talk about that on the next show. Give us a synopsis. Where is the United States at in terms of global relations, in terms of our investments and different things? What do you see happening in the world?
Sure. Alan, since we met last, I've been in the South Pacific with our great United States Navy and our great United States Coast Guard, looking at that entire theater of operation, if you will. Clearly, the influence of China is very strong in that region. The big question is what are their designs on Taiwan? But they're targeting so many other of our allies in that region. So that's an area where...
What do you mean targeting?
Well, they're going in with their plan. And what their plan is, they'll go into a country and they'll basically say, we will give you infrastructure. We want to be, quote unquote, your friend. We will give you protection. And unfortunately, they're finding some willing participants. The good news is the United States is very well respected in that part of the world, whether it's Guam, obviously, I was in Hawaii, but we're doing such a good job of patrolling that whole region. But the Chinese go in and they overfish these areas. There's so many different things. They told us that 1 out of every 5 fish caught in the world now is harvested illegally. That's bad and that's wrong. So the United States is the good guy. In the old days when we used to watch Westerns, we wear the white hats, right? And we still are. So we're very well respected, but the problem is, and there's been I would say, a drop of international respect from the transition, sadly, from Trump to Biden. Trump was respected, Trump was feared. The United States, our allies knew we were their friends. Our foes knew, whether it was North Korea, China, Russia, they knew not to test us.
So if you take
now it's different.
Well, if you I'm going to get difference. It's still the United States of America. We still have the same military leaders. We still have everything. How does that project differently? I mean, I have a hard time thinking Biden's making decisions, unilateral decisions for our military or maybe for trade.
Well, let me say this. Militarily, we are still the world's strongest superpower. Our arms, our armaments, our nuclear arsenal, we do a lot here in Oak Ridge to make sure that is always going to be the strongest in the world. The people at Y-12 and UPF, outstanding, and an SA facility. But the reality is there's a lot of question marks in the minds of our friends and our foes internationally. What is the Biden administration thinking? What are they doing after the debacle in Afghanistan, how we left there? And China's watching. The world is watching how we handle Ukraine. What will happen there? Because obviously, if we mishandle that, and I don't think we will, we have stood strong with the Ukrainian people. I voted to do that. It's important that we do that. The Russians came in and have just wreaked havoc in that country.
What was Putin's motivation as a history student, not as a congressman? Do you think he was afraid of NATO creeping in on him? What do you think? Why do you think Putin made that move?
It's an excellent question, and let me step back and just try to give you my own opinion where that is. Putin came from a failed empire. The Soviet Union fell apart in our lifetime. I never thought I would see that. It did. Ronald Reagan was right. It was the evil empire. It fell apart. Putin was a KGB agent. And think about the loss of the Soviet Union morphing into something called the Russian Federation. They lost a lot of power. They lost a lot of influence. It was literally an international embarrassment. I think that has been part of Putin's ethos, his worldview, for quite some time. And what I mean by that is I think he views himself as the only Russian leader since the demise of the Soviet Union to try to restore the Russian Federation to some semblance of greatness again. I think he's going about it the wrong way, but what
Who's
has
in
he
the
done?
Russian Federation?
Well, it's Russia. I mean,
No adjoining companies, no countries.
that's correct. They have allies. Belarus is a key ally of theirs, I think, to our detriment and to the world's detriment. They have a few other allies. They have a tacit agreement with China. I won't say a treaty per se, but they have an agreement with China. China is very disappointed in the Russian war machine. I mean, they're surprised with the frailties. They've taken a lot of casualties. They've been inept. And the Russians have met a resolve with the Ukrainian people that I don't think they ever thought would happen. The Ukrainians have fought them. We have supported them. NATO has supported them. But Russia does not want to see any other countries join NATO. Now we have seen some of the other countries in the region want to do that. Interestingly enough, Turkey's role, I think, has been detrimental. Turkey is trying to block. Turkey is a NATO ally, and in the Middle East, I think, has been a really detrimental actor in terms of maybe destabilizing the Middle East. That's another story for another day. But having said that, Turkey is trying to block other countries from joining NATO to Russians' favor. So
Do we
it's
still have military bases in Turkey?
we have military presence. I don't know if we have bases per se, but they are.
Because they were a
NATO
key geographical asset to us.
Absolutely, during the Cold War
Oh, yeah.
and the like. But Turkey under Erdogan is a very different Turkey. This is a Turkey that is a very strong actor in the Islamic community there. Clearly, they want to be more influential. And who do they challenge? So they challenge the Saudis for influence. They challenge the Egyptians for influence. And again, Erdogan is certainly not a friend of Israel's, and so potentially destabilizing actor in the region, but wanting to flex their muscle.
And they've been, because they would block other people in NATO because that would diminish their influence?
Certainly. And of course, their bad relations, if you will, with Greece over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Turkey has occupied half of Cyprus. That has been a problem in Greek and Turkey relations for quite some time. The Greek Prime Minister just recently addressed both houses of Congress in a joint session. Greece is, I think, a very beneficial actor in the region, and of late, Turkey is not.
You know, ever since I was in college, which was 126 years ago,
Yeah.
The question is, Greece's economy has always been on the ropes.
Yeah. Well,
What is that?
Well, they spent too much money. Greece was that country a few years ago that was going sadly in the direction of the United States, where they continued to deficit spend, have these mounting debts, and they couldn't pay their debts. And when you can't pay your debts as a nation or as a debtor, what happens? Your creditors get very antsy. Their creditors, largely led by Germany, basically said, you will restructure. So they had some forced restructuring put in place. They've done better. To Turkey's credit, they are working with our allies, Israel, on natural gas issues.
Turkey or Greece?
I'm sorry, Greece. I
Okay.
apologize.
Yeah.
Greece is doing that, working with Israel on natural gas and other things. So Greece has reemerged from their economic doldrums, where they were a few years ago. They've got to get more fiscal discipline, and they can and they will.
Well, I think, and that's true, and I think we see it in COVID here. Your workforce decimates under too much spending, too many entitlements. You don't have nobody want. Everybody can stay home and make $15 an hour, kind of thing. And if you get that in socialist type countries, you tend to have a hard time recovering in that sense.
Yes.
I agree with you 100%. You think, you talk about Ukraine's resolve. I think the whole country, we see signs in stores here that say, we stand with Ukraine,
Yes.
things of that nature. And I don't think they even knew where Ukraine was. But the video of everything is very strong, and I think that people see such a brave effort And you got to admit, the comedian, Zelensky, he's quick with the lines. He needs to be in our business because, he says, I don't need a ride, I need a gun, the thing. Very smart, very smart. I mean, he's really rallied people. I don't know that he came to speak to you all.
He did.
You all met him and everything, and was he good? What did you
He
like?
addressed us via Skype, both houses.
Was it Skype? Okay.
It was, did a very good job. I will say this, I've been to Kyiv. I went in 2017. I met with his predecessor, Poroshenko, and members of their government at that point in time. Since that time, since the Russian invasion, I've actually met with members of the Ukrainian parliament who have come to actually speak with us one-on-one about the situation on the ground. Yes, Zelensky has addressed us. The United States is, I think, properly supporting Ukraine in its efforts. We cannot let Putin and Russia win there for several
How
reasons.
does Putin save face and get out?
It's a very difficult position.
What's the path? Yeah.
Well, the path for him is obviously he's got to block Ukraine from ever wanting to join NATO. That may be an easier concession, but literally, and again, trying to figure out what his motivation was to do this. Looking at where things were, he made an incursion, Putin did, into Georgia. Took over 20% of that country in around 2015.
Yeah,
the
been
world
about 6-7 years
did nothing. I've been to Georgia. I've been to Tbilisi. We went to there and we looked, and there were the Russians and there were the Georgians. So that situation was not good. He moved into the Crimea in the southern part of Ukraine, and we basically did nothing, and the world did nothing. So sometimes when we appease tyrants or leaders in these countries that are very aggressive, a la Hitler with Neville Chamberlain, a la Putin with Georgia and then Crimea, sometimes the world sends the message that they're not going to do anything. This time the world did do things. So the sanctions have been strong. They've been affecting Russia. But if you look at the Russian invasion of Ukraine, beyond the borders of Ukraine, this is going to have major implications. We're going to see famine in a lot of different places in Africa. Ukraine produces a tremendous amount of agricultural products. It's got a lot of key elements. There's a lot of gases that they produce that we use in the West for manufacturing. It's going to have a very bad ripple effect. I just don't know how Putin leaves and remains in political power and saves face. It's going to be very difficult.
Our good friend Sean Williams comes on. He's one of our most popular guests because he's so knowledgeable about
great
world
American, veteran,
great American, paratrooper,
and a person with a great heart.
But he talks about history, phases in history where, reordering of populations, and you start to get at that when people are disenfranchised and they have to move, and we see all this migration going on internationally, that it tremendously impacts everything. And Ukraine seems you can't stay if there's no buildings and food and infrastructure. The question comes down to, does Ukrainians who tend to remind me of Pittsburghers, they don't ever leave their town. I mean, Ukrainians, do they stay or do they migrate? Are they migrating largely now?
They're trying to come back. Initially.
Is it stabilized enough?
No. It is not, because there's a hot war there. Sadly, as you alluded to, you're having Russia go into that country all across the nation with various levels of success and failure.
Right.
Going in and literally destroying infrastructure. When you destroy cities, when you destroy buildings where people live and work and play, it's very difficult to go back and just say, well, I'm just going to move back in. There have been more people wanting to come back, understandably, to Ukraine. The United States, I think, rightfully so, is going to accept at least 100,000 Ukrainians. Other countries, Poland and the like, but these puts pressure on these other economies as well in the region. Poland has been very helpful, absolutely. And it just destabilizes the whole region.
People that don't understand the geography, you've got obviously the major Russia, then you got Ukraine that borders it, and then Poland is exactly on the other side of that border. It's there. It'd be like Kentucky,
also.
and be like Kentucky, Tennessee, and Alabama.
Yeah.
We all go boom, boom, boom.
Yes.
Let's take a 2-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about a few more problems and a few more good things that's going on in the country. Thank you, folks.
Unlike other health concerns, mental illness is not always easy to see. DEPR.
Mental illness doesn't show up on a scale.
Bipolar?
Sorting out a mental health concern takes professional diagnosis and treatment.
Anxiety. I thought so.
If you or a loved one has a mental health concern, don't go it alone. For 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, call 1-800-662-HELP. Learn more at samhsa.gov/support.
What if one day you went to your secret hiding place and instead of what you came for, you found this? What would you do? The truth is, all drug use comes with risk. Before drugs take their toll on you and your family, know that there is help. You can quit. If you or someone you love is struggling with drug use, call 1-800-662-HELP for 24-hour free and confidential information and treatment referral, or go to samhsa.gov/know-the-risks.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
I'm Andrew Saul, Commissioner of Social Security. Beware of telephone scammers pretending to be government employees. Real Social Security employees will never threaten you. Callers threatening you with arrest or other legal action and demanding money are not from us. If you receive a call like this, hang up. Do not provide them with any form of payment or information. Report the call at oig.ssa.gov.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking to Congressman Chuck Fleischmann, and there's, I'd say, a handful of congressmen in the country that are more influential. Out of 435, you've probably got a half a dozen to a dozen people that are in a select group, and he is one of them, and we're lucky to have him in Anderson County and Roane County. I appreciate it. And being friends with Chuck for 12, 15 years, whatever, the bottom line is he's a student of history. When he starts quoting countries and people, he was that long before he was a political person. But degrees from Illinois, UT Law School, and others. Let's switch a little bit. We'll go back to Europe in a second. Well, let's stay on that. Let's talk about world economies. Let's talk about strictly money. Sure. Who's doing well, who's not doing well in the world?
Well, Europe is not doing well if you take them as a whole. They are energy dependent, and thank goodness in the United States, the Biden administration notwithstanding, the United States fortunately has abundant fossil fuels that we want to develop. We want to keep ourselves strong and energy independent, and nuclear is a big part of that. That's why I'm such a strong advocate for nuclear.
And for our environmental friends, cleanest form of energy in the world.
Absolutely. And Oak Ridge leading the way, not only in the United States, but for the world. I'm so proud of Oak Ridge. But having said that, the Germans made the decision a few years ago to go away from nuclear. Okay, that was their choice. Other countries have been so dependent on Russia for natural gas and other resources. This is a big problem. So energy drives a lot of the economy. So they're in a very difficult position. Europe is trying to basically figure out where they are. Britain has gone off on its own path. The French still want to be the dominant leader, but Germany's got the biggest economy now.
To the French's credit, 83% of their nation's powered by nuclear power. They always had nuclear.
And the French recycle. In the United States, we don't recycle our nuclear spent fuel. I don't like to use the term waste, but spent fuel, and there's big debate out there. But the French have done that for years at a place called Le Havre. and they've done it very successfully.
And safely?
And, well, I think safely, and this is kind of interesting. I have Republican and Democratic friends who agree with me on that, and I have Republican and Democratic friends who vehemently disagree with me on that. Ernie Moniz, who is President Obama's Secretary of Energy, he and I worked well together. We disagreed on some issues, but he always took care of Oak Ridge when I told him, please take care of my constituents in Anderson and Roane counties. Yeah. He was good to them. He is a big foe of reprocessing. I'm a fan of reprocessing, but again, so it's not a political issue, but the French do it in a way, they've done it for years, in effect, that isolates about 1% plutonium. That becomes a non-proliferation risk, okay?
Yeah.
I think the United States has the technology to do it in a way that we isolate or tie up the plutonium and do it safely. But going back to Europe...
But a non-proliferation risk is not the same as a health risk.
That's correct.
We're talking about somebody getting a hold of that plutonium and getting access to making bombs. Okay.
And the French safeguard that. That's correct.
Understand.
But there are some questions about the process. They do that. Other countries have done it. The Russians have done that. The Japanese used to do that. The United States has not done it. So what happens, we end up storing these spent nuclear fuel rods around either shuttered former nuclear power plants or active nuclear power plants. It's great cost. And again, for political purposes, one way or other, Trump killed Yucca, Biden kept it dead, so Yucca is not an option, at least right now. So
you said Trump killed Yucca.
Basically said Yucca will not go through.
Trump said that.
Yucca Mountain.
Everybody expected that to go through when he got in there, didn't they?
They did, and as long as Nevada is going to be competitive in any type of presidential or Senate races.
You're talking about Whip?
Yeah. Well, no, Whip is in Whip
oh,
is
you're saying Yucca's in Nevada.
Whip is in New Mexico.
That's
but
correct.
Yucca in Nevada, it's just not going to go right now. So we need, as a country, to look at alternatives. Some are looking at reprocessing. Otherwise, you're going to have to look at interim storage. It's expensive, and it becomes the, if you will, somewhat of an Achilles heel for proponents of nuclear, such as myself, because what are you going to do with the waste?
Strongest economy in Europe?
Gosh, I'd have to probably still say the Germans. Yep.
And the Germans, what is their driving economic force for the Germans?
The Germans post-unification. Again, in my life, I never thought I would see the demise of the Soviet Union.
It's a big country now.
Yes, it is a big country. When they unified, they came together. The East lagged the West because they were in the Eastern Bloc. They've now caught up. They're manufacturing well. They're the largest economy in Europe.
And nobody has a superior work ethic.
Oh, they
go.
They're brilliant. I mean, they look at Volkswagen in our district. We have a lot of German investment in Tennessee, very strongly driven, technologically driven. So they will continue to do well. The French, it's interesting to see where they are politically. Europeans are still politically and economically much more polar. There's a much more polar division. Their left is much more extreme. Their right is much more extreme.
We're getting there.
Sadly, we are getting there. In my lifetime, that's right. We are seeing in the United States a greater polarization. I never thought I would see a time in the United States where somebody could run as a socialist.
That's because there's more input.
Yes. Yep. But we are getting more polarized.
I said last night, well, it's been a few nights ago now, but I was talking on the show and I said, I think it may be time for, and I know you don't want to hear this, but I think there's time for a third or fourth party. My theory becomes with Italian politics and other politics, if you got a heavy blue and you got a heavy red, right, then that green, not necessarily meaning environmental, but any other color, yellow, whatever you want to make it brown, well, that third party might force a coalition with another party for moderation. It could happen in decades ahead. I was talking to some young people, and basically what energizes them is that there's a number of issues that we're getting to the head of this. I mean, you know, as of today, we have no ruling on Roe versus Wade. We have had a shooting in Texas this week.
Very sad.
That was very sad and tragic. So all these issues are going to rise up, and there's going to be extremes, you know. You got Beto running up to the stage. You got parents that are torn up. I mean, it's a mess. So the question comes down to, staying in Europe, the polarization is, Is there much capitalism? That's what I'm trying to say. Is there much competition in Europe?
Yes, I would
Okay.
think so.
Okay.
But Europe has never really been able to come together as some in Europe wanted, almost like the United States of Europe. Most of them have the common currency, the euro. The British obviously have left all of that. But here's the situation. We are structured in the United States with a very strong two-party system. And I like the two-party system. I'm a very
me too.
partisan
It's all I've
Republican.
ever had.
But in Europe, if you look at their parliamentary systems, whether it's in England, whether it's in France, whether it's in Germany, they are more conducive to coalition governments and more multiple parties.
Sure.
Their leaders, their prime ministers come out of their legislative branch, where ours is separate, thank God, in a presidency and an executive branch under our Constitution. So what does that mean? That means they have more non-confidence votes. And with multiple political parties, that means smaller political parties, where in the United States would just be drubbed out or wiped out in either a primary or a general election, can actually play and join in coalitions. England traditionally has had three parties. You've had the Conservatives, Labours, and then you had the Liberals, which are kind of in the middle. France is all over the place. Germany is all over the place. So we're seeing more coalition governments. What happens with coalition governments? Compromises that usually ultimately end up falling through.
Give me a 3-minute, 4-minute segment on Taiwan and China. Where's Taiwan going to end up?
Great question.
I'm amazed that it survived this long. My father worked there for one summer to help in the nuclear industry, but I mean, it was always looked up to. But
sure. Well, you have to address China, mainland China, the People's Republic of China. Clearly, we talked about the demise of the Soviet Union, the resulting Russian Federation. We talked about what's gone on in Europe. China is the big surprise. I can remember as a kid when Richard Nixon basically recognized China. And at that time, China was an agrarian, backwards economy. Mao's version of communism took hold, oddly, in an agrarian, poor society, really almost antithetical to what Marx was talking about, where he thought it would take place in capitalist societies. Sure. So that was always odd. And China's bad relationship with Russia back in the day when they were both communists, Russia kept 2/3 of their troops on the border with China. Sure. We always talked about the West. They never got along with China. Today they get along better with China. But where is China today? They have had an aggressive plan, a dangerous plan, a controlled plan. I argue sometimes they're better capitalists than us. They come in
question.
And they
know how to save.
Yep, an order goes down, everybody complies. It's very dangerous, but it's effective. So where is China? China, obviously, through the lease, when the lease expired with Taiwan after 100 years with the British, China took over Hong Kong. That was a boon to them, and that was, if you will, legal because.
But it was almost non-eventful afterwards.
It was non-eventful, but the Hong Kong was and still is such a strong economic hub, and obviously they want democracy in Hong Kong. I don't think they're going to get it. That's why you see those protests. They were used to that. But Taiwan, when Chiang Kai-shek left, when Mao took over, about 1949, went to the island of Taiwan. The United States traditionally has defended Taiwan as our ally. And Taiwan produces a tremendous amount of the microchips and other things needed for American and Western manufacture. Now,
and the defense industry.
Yes. So the question is, we know this. Mainland China wants Taiwan. They view that as part of Big China. Taiwan does not want to be part of mainland China. Therein lay the rub. We arm and support Taiwan. The question is, when will China and how will they make their move on Taiwan? Will it be militarily? I think not, okay? Why? Because I think the stakes are too high. What will the United States do? What will the rest of the world do? So what I think we're going to see, and we are seeing now, are more diplomatic, other economic and efforts, propaganda efforts by mainland China, by the People's Republic of China, into Taiwan to see whether or not they can sway them. Time will tell, but bottom line, mainland China wants them. They don't want to be part of that, and the rest of the world is watching.
Are the leaders of China more progressive than they were 30 years ago? 20
No.
years?
I'd say
it's cycled, right?
I'd say they're more authoritarian. Sadly, they're more efficient. Think about it. Mao, in the Cultural Revolution, basically killed all the lawyers. There were about 6 lawyers left in China when he got done.
They've done well ever since. No, I'm just kidding.
But I mean, this was a poor, backward nation. Think of what Japan did to China in World War II.
Oh, it's horrible.
They went in there and ravaged after the Doolittle raid. They went in and killed 250,000 Chinese in retribution. This was a backward country. This is no longer a backward country. This is a country with an economy basically the size of the United States economy. And since they have such a tightly controlled situation, somebody gives an order, they follow it, whether it's in the manufacturing sector or any other sector. So they have an efficiency advantage that we in the West, who value our freedoms rightfully so, don't necessarily have.
Real quick, before we take another break, if I'm Starbucks and I want to open a store in Beijing, how does that work?
Basically, if you're any American business and you want to do that, you're going to play by Chinese rules.
Which are what economically? Vested interests?
Which are going to basically very heavily favor the Chinese. And I'm glad you raised this. Whether it's the Chinese or sometimes even the Russians, our view of Western contract law, you and I make a contract. You're going to run a campaign for me. We have a contract. I'm going to pay you so much. We understand going into that relationship that
expectations.
There's expectations. I've got to perform and you've got to perform. And if there's a breach, there is a recourse in a court of law to do that. Chinese ethos is very different about that. It's almost a fluidity in terms of agreements. If it starts not working in their favor, they want to change on a moment's notice.
What makes it in their favor?
What makes it in their favor? Economic gain, control, and basically a desire, sadly, to take that foreign know-how, whether it's technology or business acumen, and try to incorporate or morph that into the Chinese worldview.
So if I'm Starbucks in Beijing and I'm making a net, say I have 3 or 4 stores and I'm making a net profit of $600,000 or $700,000 a year in those stores, there's a royalty paid to the Chinese government?
Depends on the deal. They will structure the deal depending on the specific need. For example, I have friends in the nuclear field who, in China, has a massive, aggressive nuclear program, civil and military, but civil for sure. They want to bring nuclear power not only to China, but to the world. What they will do is they will go out, and if someone has a technology that is unique or patented, they will want to try to copy that. Well, you can do that maybe with a car part, but you can't do that with a nuclear reactor, right? You want to make sure that whether that part, whether it's a neutron scouter or whatever it's going to be, it's got to work. Right. You can't have that. So they will go in and they will try to dictate terms. It's about control. They want a Chinese model to basically have control. And then they want to go out to the world and sell that on terms. It's almost like the old company store. They'll go into a country and they'll say, we'll build you a road, we'll build you a nuclear reactor, we'll do this and that for you. Oh, by the way, if you can't pay for it, how about maybe we put a Navy base here? So it's a very disadvantageous model to third world developing countries to get trapped in that China web.
Absolutely. We're going to take another 2-minute break, and then we're going to come back and talk more about international and what the United States is facing.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
This is my husband, Alex Hesse. Alex is about 2 weeks away from coming home.
I was playing man in foot patrol, and I stopped on the bomb. Lost my legs and my left hand in an explosion.
And he suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
There are so many mountains to climb, and we do it together.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories, great and small.
To watch Alex take on this mountain, that's what this is all about.
DAV provides a lifetime of support to veterans of every generation, helping more than 1 million veterans each year.
Alex has conquered this mountain. That's something he won't forget.
With the right support, there are no limits.
Look at that smile! You did it!
But there's more to be done and more victories to be won.
This has meant so much.
Thank you, DAV.
Alex Hesse, thank you for your service. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Always ready, always there. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're talking with Congressman Chuck Fleischmann about the United States and in June 22 where we're at and who's our friends and whatever. Let's switch to the border. It's a domestic issue, but it's also an international issue.
It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare. The Congressman says it's a nightmare. Has it gotten any better?
No.
Tell us about it.
It's and this is something. So our listeners know, I sit on 3 subcommittees on the Appropriations Committee, but I'm the ranking member, the highest Republican on the Homeland Security Subcommittee of Appropriations. So I fund the wall. Actually, we forced Joe Biden to sign $1.9 billion for the wall in the last omnibus. I promised President Trump we would get that done. We did. Biden signed it. The progressives hated it, but we're making some progress. But
is there construction, whether it be a foot or a mile, is it actually going on?
They're filling up gaps. It's tough to get them to do that, but fortunately the constraints on the money that we've already appropriated will force them to ultimately build some wall.
Okay.
Yes. Drives the progressives crazy. But be that as it may.
That's an academic word for liberals.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That's right. Well, we're euphemizing today.
Yeah, okay.
But be that as it may. The situation at the border is a national security crisis. We have people coming across from, about 137, 140 countries. Some we're catching, some we're not. Every move that we make to secure the border, to secure the rule of law, to make it harder, whether it's with technology, with people, Title 42, this administration thwarts it. They want open and porous borders. They fight us day in, day out. It's to the detriment of this country. I think it's perhaps one of the biggest failures with an administration that has been a failure with a capital F. But the border failure has been outrageous. It's wrong. It hurts this country.
Give us some numbers.
Well, let me go backwards to forwards.
Sure.
Fortunately, the courts have basically kept Title 42 in place. Now, the Biden administration is trying to go around.
What is Title 42?
Title 42 is basically a system that has been in place to keep out people during the COVID situation. It's actually stems from the CDC, but rest assured, Joe Biden could say, keep it in effect, and they would do it. But having said that, if Title 42 goes away, hear me out. 1 million to 2 million more illegal immigrants that are just waiting on the other side will come in. Thank goodness the courts have blocked it. Republicans have done everything to try to keep it in place, to keep these illegals out. But we have seen, since Joe Biden took office, he and his minions incentivizing basically illegal immigration. Trump had solved this problem. We had a safe and secure border. I'd been to the border with the president. Yes, I'm a Trump fan. Let's get that out there. I like Donald Trump. He likes me. But I'm not going to lie for anybody. He had the border secured. And we had many talks. We went to Calexico on the border. I funded his wall. We got all that done. Now it is a porous border, but what's worse, every policy that could and would work, this administration is fighting us on. So we're going to have to step up and do something about it. It is hurting this country.
Are illegal immigrants coming in any other way besides the southern border?
Sure. There are other borders. We have a northern border, but
the forgotten country, right?
Yeah,
we could talk a whole show for every day.
Sure.
Nobody ever mentions the word Canada.
That's right.
It's probably good for Canada.
But the real problem is the southern border, and it's large. It's different. There are several sectors that are out there that the Department of Homeland Security has to basically try to protect. It's different in McAllen from Laredo. It's different in California. I've been all across the border. It's different in Arizona, but in Yuma. But we've got to secure our borders as a nation. And the problem of allowing all these illegals who are here, who are just being released into our country, the vast majority of which will never show up for a hearing. The Biden administration now is going to put in no more, well, I shouldn't say no more, immigration judges will now not be the prime determination of asylum. In this country, we're going to have employees basically say to an illegal immigrant, they're going to make the first determination of asylum. That's outrageous.
Employers?
Yes, they're going to, employees of the government. They're going to hire.
That's right.
So, in other words, you go out and you hire Joe or Sally. Now you're going to determine whether or not they're not a judge, they're not legally trained in immigration law.
What are they called? What is their administrative?
I think they're just going to be called employees of the Homeland Security. And they're going to be sitting there on behalf of the Biden administration making determinations whether or not there is a valid asylum claim by the illegal immigrant. What is that going to mean? They're going to say, come on in.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
Let's talk about the fall elections for a second, even though we're kind of creeping over into the next show. But let's talk about, just real quick, will a Republican House and a Republican Senate change our abilities to be stronger on the international front? I mean, how does it apply in that sense?
In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. Prediction, we will win the House back with either very good or excellent margins.
Right.
Is that going to be 5 or 10 seats or 20 or 30 seats? I don't know. We're looking very well. Republicans are poised to do exceedingly well in the House. The Senate is a lot tighter and a lot closer. As you look, Republicans have got to cover in North Carolina, Ohio. These are Republican seats. We should do that. We should have a pickup in Georgia. I do believe
Herschel's going to make it.
I think Herschel.
Touchdown for Herschel.
Yeah, yes. I played football with Herschel still.
Not on the field with a uniform on.
Yeah.
When did you play against Herschel?
I played with Herschel. I'm smarter not to play against him. I played with him.
Some kind of congressional game?
Congressional game.
I went to the national championship where Penn State beat. I don't remember seeing you on the field.
Yeah, well, I will tell you this, and I always tease Herschel about this. I am in the Congressional Football Hall of Fame, and he is not yet. So when he gets elected, he'll be able
I
to
don't
get in
think
the
you
Hall
have
of Fame.
much to worry about on that.
There
I
you
haven't
go.
watched Herschel in a long time.
He's still in great shape.
Is he?
He'll
I
win
think
in
he's
Georgia.
got a chance. Yeah.
He'll win in Georgia. Arizona.
That's a pickup.
Could be a pickup for us in Arizona.
In Georgia.
Georgia will be a pickup.
Who's running in Arizona?
Well, it's yet to be determined. They've got their primary coming up this month in June.
Who's the incumbent?
Well, the incumbent is the astronaut. Is the incumbent Democrat astronaut who beat McSally. You know, McSally ran twice and didn't win, so she won't be in that mix. But we could have a pickup there. Pennsylvania is a real concern. The Toomey seat, which is a Republican seat, that is a real toss-up. And obviously, Dr. Oz ran against McCormick. They're having a recount there. It's razor thin. Who will be the Republican nominee? And
which one is the conservative Trump type people supporting?
Oz was endorsed by President Trump.
Okay.
And I know Dr. Oz. I've met with him. He's actually been to Chattanooga before. Early in his career, a little bit more progressive. Now is in line with President Trump's policies and has been endorsed by Trump. But they're in a recount now. Either it'll be Oz or McCormick.
Who's the Democrat?
I believe it's going to be Fetterman. So I've got to check my notes on that. But
watch the ballot box in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
So that is going to be a key cover because that's a Republican seat now. So New Hampshire, Sununu decided not to run. It would have been an easy win over Hassan. Now Hassan is probably up a little bit or even in the polls. So a little bit harder to get a gain there. So bottom line, maybe 1 to 3 seat gain in the Senate, I hope. I would like to see more, but we've got to get the Senate back, and then we have to block Joe Biden every which way. Maybe when we start blocking this radical left-wing agenda that we shouldn't have seen from Joe Biden. We saw it from Pelosi and Schumer. Biden looked at the American people in his inauguration speech and said he was going to be president for all Americans. He is not. He's been president for radical left-wing America. It's hurting this country. So if we win the House and the Senate, maybe we can bring him back towards the center. How does that help us internationally? Obviously, on the funding side, we can direct funding, military spending to our friends, to our allies, and basically tie his hands, and then hopefully, and I say this earnestly, get a Republican president in 2024.
And it seems to me that if you control both of the houses, I mean the House, or even just the House, let's just say the House, but comfortably 20, 30 votes, can't you block funding for these programs?
You can block.
He can have all the programs he wants, but if you can't pay the people, then it ain't going to help him.
That is correct. However, the presidency, the executive branch, sadly, through a tool called the executive order. What did Joe Biden do? As soon as he was elected, he got in his limousine and he went back to the White House, and what did he do? He started signing multiple executive orders.
But every president's done that since Obama, back before that.
Well, yeah, to a certain extent. FDR did it a lot, and then in the modern era, it did wane. Largely until Trump did some. I applauded many of his, but Biden's gone nuts with the executive pen. Obama
still need money.
Yes, they need money, they need appropriations, and what we're going to have to do, we're going to have to use congressional oversight. What Democrats are doing in the modern era, let me be specific, Dodd-Frank, one of the worst pieces of legislation ever in America. Why? Dodd and Frank got together, and what they said, we're not going to have congressional oversight over this. That's outrageous. We, as Americans, ought to have our elected leaders in the House and Senate have oversight over the executive branch. I think that's fundamental to our constitutional republic, but we don't have that with Dodd-Frank. So watch for them to use the executive orders, to use ways to get around things, just like they're doing. You talked about the southern border. Every time we get a gain, either from the courts or with legislation to protect our southern border, the Biden administration comes up with another way, because of the politics of it, to try to open it up.
Let's take our final break. We'll be back in 2 minutes to talk more with Congressman Chuck Fleischmann.
Since the moment you were born, I've made 1,000 wishes. Wishes for your future, in a world that's changing fast. Because no matter what you do in this life, what matters to me is that you keep
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
This is my husband, Alex Hesse. Alex is about 2 weeks away from coming home.
I was point man on foot patrol, and I stepped on the bomb. Lost my legs and my left hand in an explosion.
And he suffered a severe traumatic brain injury.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there.
There are so many mountains to climb, and we do it together.
With the right support, more veterans can reach victories, great and small.
Come on, Alex, take on this mountain. That's what this is all about.
DAV provides a lifetime of support to veterans of every generation, helping more than 1 million veterans each year.
Alex has conquered this mountain. That's something he won't forget.
With the right support, there are no limits.
Look at that smile! You did it!
But there's more to be done and more victories to be won.
This has meant so much.
Thank you, DAV.
Alex Hussey, thank you for your service. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
Always ready, always there. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Hello, I'm District Attorney General Dave Clark. My fellow DAs and I successfully fought for new elder abuse laws and procedures that have police departments and agencies using improved tools to protect our seniors. Victims of elder abuse are often unable to recognize or report abuse themselves. They need your voice. If you suspect abuse, contact local law enforcement or adult protective services. Let's work together to protect our seniors.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. We're visiting with Congressman Chuck Fleischmann. We're doing 2 shows. He's going to come back and do another show. We've talked a lot about international. The next one will be more political and regional. I want to talk a little bit about business models because we have competing economic models. And, you know, you see the Teslas of the world, the NEO, Chinese electric company, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, China's become a major part of our economic business world. Communists, capitalists, whatever, they've got an economic model they're working on. You remember 40 years ago it was the Japanese model that everybody was imitating in manufacturing stuff. Tell us what the United States is doing to remain competitive.
It's an excellent question, and that is the issue that we face every day, whether it's in the civil nuclear sector or the like. We are competing largely with China and Russia, but largely China in the developing world, throughout Africa, Asia, Central and South America even. Their model is to go in and offer financing, technical ability, the ability to run these places, and they've got an offer on the table. Sadly, and I'm going to use nuclear, the Poles have come to us, the Romanians have come to us, and they said, look, we want to be part of the American nuclear family. We want American nuclear civil reactors and the like. Here's the problem. We don't offer, as a country, the United States, a way to give them credit and to finance them. Okay? The World Bank does not do this. They won't touch nuclear. The Ex-Im Bank, which is out there, does not have really a viable way to do this. So what these countries are looking to us, I met with the head of the Romanian nuclear business and actually a government official, and he said, listen, we went the other way. We want to go to the United States. Give us a model where you can actually build and finance these nuclear power plants and the like so that we can go with America. We've got to develop a model, I think, that will allow us to compete against the Chinese, who will come in, and in some cases the Russians, and say, we'll give you soup to nuts on whatever. And of course, then they end up subject, these other poor countries, to Chinese and or Russia domination, economically and otherwise, and politically. So hopefully we will come up with a way for us to make it easier for the rest of the world to do business with us.
Very interesting. So basically, they can't afford it.
They can't afford it, and here's the thing.
now, what's the goal of the Polish government and the Romanian government? Is it to provide electricity cheaper?
Yes. To go and be part of the civil nuclear team, but they've both told the Russians no. They've told the Chinese no. So they want to tell the Americans
well,
yes.
Those two have a lot of history there. They
yes.
know. They know what they're getting into.
But they want to do business with the United States of America. We just have to come up with a way that will work and give them an ability to build and finance these power plants and use American technology. The American technologies are still superior. Now, there are other countries. We talked about our foes. Some of our allies have moved into this sphere in a very strong way. South Korea, for example, are building a lot of SMRs and have an SMR nuclear
Small
industry.
modular reactors.
Right, the light water reactors that really we have, I think I would say, perfected at Oak Ridge over the years. These were all originally Oak Ridge technologies. It's amazing. Even the darn Chinese are using original Oak Ridge technologies. Right. They're using a lot of thorium reactors. These were built and designed in the late 60s right here in Oak Ridge. I will say this, wherever I go all over the world, it's amazing. Even though I'm from Chattanooga, people look at me and say, Chuck Fleischmann, Oak Ridge. Yeah. Donald Trump, we'd sitting on Air Force One. Tell me about Oak Ridge. Yeah. I mean, we are literally, talk about a lucky congressman. I represent the brightest and the best people in the world right here in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Sure. It's phenomenal. Our lab, Y-12 UPF, our cleanup mission, we are the best. And I always tell people, as you know, I'm a student of antiquity and of classics. I always tell people, I use the analogy that we are the Rome of DOE world. All roads lead to Oak Ridge. Yeah. Now, they don't like that in Idaho, New Mexico, or Hanford, or South Carolina, but too bad.
But in a lot of ways, they're our competitors. We're all on the same mission.
True.
But funding-wise, you got Congressman Simpson trying to get more money for this in Idaho. You're trying to get more money for the lab. Somebody else is trying to. So, and Washington sucks up everything because they're so big.
And what do I say? Wherever we do it, I don't care if it's fission, I don't care if it's fusion, you name it, manufacturing, we do it better in Oak Ridge than anywhere else. Yeah. And guess what? You look at the ITER project, the fusion project in France, the United States, 9% of that. Where do we do the work? Right here in Oak Ridge.
Yeah, when we come back next week, we're going to talk about UPF. We're going to talk about how this administration, I think you're starting to build some bridges in that sense. Small tactical or nuclear weapons. People think when we grew up, hydrogen bomb, if it falls on Knoxville, because we knew about it here, it's going to wipe out 100 miles. There are smaller nuclear weapons now. I mean, Russia and China are
tactical nuclear weapons.
That,
yes.
You shoot into one city, you wipe out 6 miles. Winds matter, obviously, with radiation. But tell us that story. Is that a real competition?
It is, and let me say this again. The NNSA and the work that is done right here in Oak Ridge, we talk about keeping our nation's nuclear arsenal strong and updated. We do the secondaries here. We do a great job on that. But something that does not get out and is not as heard as the great job the NNSA does in nuclear non-proliferation. Let me be specific. What that means is we go out as a nation, led right here in Oak Ridge, and basically we'll say if there are is there bad material out there, like we can go out there and actually get that, secure it, and keep it from getting in the hands of bad people. So we do a very good job as a nation, but led in Oak Ridge on nuclear non-proliferation, keeping the bad materials, weapons out of the hands of bad actors. Having said that, our foes who are already in the nuclear club, China and Russia, I'll be specific there, sadly North Korea now, but let's deal with China and Russia. We can ill afford, we cannot have a nuclear exchange of weapons. I think that would be disastrous. Obviously, we don't want the old issue of mutually assured destruction where we fire off 10, they fire off 15, and the world goes away. That was horrible. That's the world in which we grew up. But these tactical nuclear weapons that are out there, I don't want to see any nation use those because, again, what will that mean in terms of the impact in that area? Also, what will that mean in the potential impact for an escalation? If somebody ever says, I'm going to push that button or use that weapon, whether how small or large it is, it creates the potential for an escalation. Very dangerous. I never want to see that type of world.
Let me ask one question. How many countries in the nuclear club now? 40,
10.
50, 10? There's only 10 countries with nuclear weapons?
Yep. Some have given them back. South Africa gave them back. Other countries have left the club. But I'd say 10
let me
or
try
11.
to name them. I want to try to name them. Okay, real quick. We got 1 minute. France, England, United States, China, Russia, and Israel. That's 6.
Okay. Sadly, North Korea.
France.
Now. You already mentioned French.
German?
No, Germany doesn't have them.
Well, they've been saddled by treaty.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think.
Anybody else in the Middle East?
No. Iran's not there yet. God forbid they ever get there.
Yeah.
But Canada.
Canada
has nuclear weapons.
I didn't even know they had guns.
Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, Canada,
actually,
right? Hey.
Canada has a very bold civil nuclear program, which is strong. So
Canada does things well, though.
So
we only got 15 seconds. Thank you for coming on. Look forward to seeing you next week. You just do a great job. We really appreciate you.
Enjoyed the show.
Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next Thursday.